What's up, Tomboy Official? Back to some of these dating topics. Um, I guess. Uh, I've talked about this topic before, I think. Um, Maybe I haven't. Um, but I guess about anxiety. Now, I don't wanna. It's such a big topic. Um, I don't know if I'm gonna have the energy to really do it justice, but I'll talk in general about some things. Now, this isn't medical advice. It's not mental health advice. It's not any kind of good professional advice. It's more for educational and you know entertainment purposes. Uh, I have worked in the field of psychology, but you know I'm rusty. I'm out of practice. I'm not licensed. I can't do anything without being under the supervision of a licensed professional. So I can't really tell people what to do because I'd need to have someone to consult. But I do understand like anxiety in general. I've talked about um, how how I was introduced to and uh, the modality of ISTDP by John Friedrichsen. That's probably the modality that I like. It comes from psychodynamic. I like it. It kind of talks more about, there are aspects of it that talk about like the ego, what the ego defenses bring up. Um, and also, I like that it talks about, how to work with ego defenses. Um, an example of an ego defense, I don't know, I can't I feel like once I start talking about this stuff, I just go on and on and on and on and on. Maybe people like some of those topics though, but an example of an ego defense would be, say if you're the therapist and somebody is talking, and they're telling a story about something that stressed them out this week, and they start explaining their emotions. You ask them, "What are your emotions?" Now this isn't comprehensive. This is just like just very general, but and just a few details about that. Say if somebody's talking about, you know, say it's like a lesbian couple, but only one of the couple is there in therapy, and you're their therapist, and the one lesbian is saying, my partner is stressing me out. Um, I'm losing sleep over it. That's usually easier for people to say. Is like you can say I'm stressed. You can say how it's affecting your routines. You can say that you're mad and vent about the situation and what this person did that got you upset, or what they're always doing that's always upsetting you. Um, but usually, when people start getting into feeling states and talking about their feelings and their emotions behind the situation, if a therapist asks a client, like, how do you feel about that? A lot of times when somebody starts talking about how they feel about something, they might kind of start not being able to answer how they feel and talk more about how they think. Or they might start talking and then all of a sudden, they're talking about how they feel, how they can tell that they're having that emotion versus another emotion. And when you ask someone to check in with their body, like how did your body feel, even when you're talking about it at a distance from the actual live setting, sometimes what happens is people kind of blank out and they'll be talking and then they're like, wait, where was I? What was I saying? But it's like literally they were telling you how they felt about it or something about that scenario, and they just kind of forget. That's an ego defense, or the deflection of like they don't answer how they actually feel, and they kind of like don't talk about how they feel and kind of jump into a whole other topic. Like how do you feel about, when when you tell her that you're getting upset, but then she kind of doesn't seem to care, or says she doesn't care about that. She just wants to talk about this in this moment. She doesn't care if you're getting upset. And then if you if the client starts saying like how they feel, but then they're like, oh, how do you feel? It's like, oh, I feel upset when she says that, and you know, she's always upsetting me. Like, I'm always upset, and like she always says that I'm upset, but it's usually her fault. And like they kind of go off on this rant. That's another type of defense. It's kind of like, well, now you're talking about the scenario and the situations, but it's like your mind does this. It just automatically shifts into these places. Like, those aren't the only ones. It's not just like the avoiding emotions, but talking more about the cognitive intellectual aspects of things. It's not just that, and it's also not just like, you know, when you're talking about something that you kind of like completely forget what you were saying because your mind went somewhere else for a second. Those aren't the only types. There's like a list of different types of ego defenses, but those are kind of examples of what it looks like. But if you're in a therapist's office talking about something, that's a little bit different than like when you're actually in a disagreement with some specific person, or when you're having some kind of like difficulty. So when it comes to anxiety, a lot of people have anxiety with dating. Um, where do I want to go with this? So anxiety, um, not everybody has a diagnosis of like generalized anxiety or like an anxiety disorder of some kind, even if it's unspecified or something along those lines. Not everybody has like a social anxiety or something like that that they fully fit the criteria for the diagnosis. But people can get anxious in different settings. Um, and I like how John Friedrichsen's model talks about the attunement. That's kind of like an important thing, because I feel like what anxiety can do to people when they're trying to meet somebody and date is they get anxious. You know, they get anxious about whatever it is that they're anxious about. You know, I'm not saying people shouldn't get anxious. I'm just saying if you're anxious and have a difficult time with it to a point that you can't figure out how to maneuver around it or work with it and actually do what it is that you need to do to be able to date. Because I'm not saying that people with anxiety can't date. It's just there might be that discomfort for them when they're dating. Now, a lot of times, what happens when someone's anxious is, you know, they have a difficulty with this attunement to kind of like be attuned to another person at that point in time. It might not be like a permanent thing across like all social settings, but it might be like they're a little bit nervous, you know, they're meeting someone new, they don't really know how to react, and their own awareness of their own insecurities is maybe a little heightened. You know, people start thinking like, oh, like maybe, you know, maybe I'm not making enough eye contact, or maybe I'm not talking loud enough, or maybe I'm not letting them talk enough, or, you know, maybe I'm, you know, they don't like the way I'm dressed, or, you know, they're taking a really long time in the bathroom. Maybe they're making other plans and don't want to talk to me. Like, maybe I'm stressing them out. Like, you know, all these kind of things, you know. But if you've got all that going on in your mind while you're trying to be on a date, it's going to be really hard to be on a date. Like, it's going to be stressful, you know. So it can help to find a way to kind of take that hyper I don't know if this is even a word, but like hyper attunement of yourself, like you're hyper extra focused on the negativity of potential things that could happen, or the negativity of what you think somebody else might be thinking, even if they're not, but you might interpret their facial expressions and things to mean a certain thing when that might not be the case at all. They might just see like you're looking down, you're sweating, you're breathing a little weird, you seem a little nervous, and maybe they're like, this person is really nervous, like, and it makes them nervous, and now they're reacting to your nerves. It's kind of like that might be what's happening. They might not be sitting there in judgment, like, I knew this person wasn't smart, you know. I knew they wouldn't be able to explain their political position to me, like, like I don't know that many people who are that. I don't know, they exist. They do exist, but I feel like a lot of people aren't that rude and mean and judgmental and thinking all these like negative things, um, especially when they don't even hardly know you at all yet. Um, but yeah, that hyper attunement to ourselves of like how you feel. You notice you're sweating, you notice you're blushing, you notice your heart rate is up, you notice you can't think clearly, um, you can't focus, and maybe you either want to talk more or shut down and not talk at all. Um, but I think that hyper attunement gets to be a distraction, um, in trying to be attuned to the other person, because you can't really be completely tuned out to somebody and in your own head, in your own world, in your own body completely, and not tuned into them at all. Like, people can kind of sense that, and anxiety kind of does that. It makes it so it's hard to kind of tune into somebody else. I feel like it's easier to see it in reflection, like reflecting on a situation and being like, oh, like, I said that, like, I did that. But I'm also saying, don't never beat yourself up over something. Everybody says things or does things that they're not the proudest of. Um, and I used to tell clients this, um, but it's never, if you really think you wronged someone, it's never too late to apologize. I mean, you don't have to like fixate on it, but it's never, even if it's like, I've done things where I've been like, oh, like that wasn't like the best side of me. Like, I think once at a music festival, one of my friends was trying to like get me to kind of like meet with another one of their friends. I was upset a little bit because the person I wanted to actually go with wasn't going. And instead, they gave their ticket away to this person. I didn't even know this till like an hour or so before, I was getting ready to like get picked up by them. So I'm like, it's a person I don't know, somebody I've seen, but it's a person I don't know. And when I kind of caught on that like my other friend was trying to introduce us, I could kind of tell, like, because at one point that friend was sitting in the middle, and then at one point that friend got up and moved over to the other side, and we weren't really talking, and I could tell that they were trying to get this lady to like sit next to me, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like I was not trying to do this today. I just wanted to like go to the concert with this other friend, but she wasn't even there, so I was kind of like not too happy about that. So I was like, well, I'm here, we're kind of at this event, this like rave type of event, and I was like, well, let me just take some edibles. I had sativa earlier, and then decided, I just want to have some indica, and because we were just sitting there, I'm like, we're not even out like in the crowd or anything, we're like sitting at a distance, like watching the stage from a distance, just seated. And I was kind of like, okay, well, if we're just gonna sit here all day, I'm just gonna get stoned. And so oh man, but when I get that way, I kind of tune into the music. I get like really tuned into the music. So I'm there. There's this friend that's kind of like, we're not really talking, because some of my friends know. Like, when I get on a certain level, we're not talking. I'm just spaced out, and we're not really gonna have like a very deep conversation, especially when there's a lot of loud music around. So if it's like a bar or club where there's loud music, I'm probably not gonna be all that sociable if I'm having an edible. But they didn't really. This new person did not really know that about me, so she's trying to talk to me, and I'm not even. I'm like, I don't even want to talk to her. Like, I just want to listen to the music because I was like, I wasn't trying to like make conversation or meet anybody new. I actually wanted to catch up with this other friend, and we didn't get to really catch up, and I didn't really want to bother getting to know someone new. I'm like, I don't even want to talk. I just want to listen to the music, and so I completely just tuned her out. And she asked me quite a few times, like, "Are you okay? Like, how are you doing?" kind of thing, and I was just like, "Yeah, I'm fine," and like, I just did not feel like talking. And I didn't care that I didn't feel like talking. I was like, whatever, I don't know you. And like, I mean, at a certain point, I kind of regretted it. Like, maybe like a few days or weeks or months later, I was like, oh man, I really kind of botched that. But I didn't really want to talk to her. Like, I was enjoying myself in the way that I wanted to enjoy myself. Because I was like, well, if I'm not catching up with that other friend, then I'm just going to go and just be in my own head. Um, but I did kind of like eventually once everything kind of wore off and we went and we're eating afterwards, we were kind of like out. We went out like a little bit afterwards to grab some food. And so we left, grabbed some food, and then during that time I remember saying like, sorry, I don't really talk that much when I have edibles and stuff like that. And so, nobody really said anything, but I was like, I probably should have mentioned that, because like, she asked me at least like 5 times how I was doing, and I was just like, not trying to talk to her. But I think it came off like she kind of noticed. She was like, she doesn't want to talk to me, and like, and I was kind of like not wanting to talk to her, but I did feel kind of blindsided by that too, though. So I was kind of like, dude, like this is not how I expected my day to go. Um, but we had fun. I had fun anyways. But it's easy to look back at those situations and be like, oh man, you know, because she was nice. She seemed cool. I liked her personality and everything. I just didn't do a very good job, at like trying to like stay in touch, or even get to know her at all. Um, but I don't know. We we have fun? I had fun, but yeah, I was totally not attuned to her. And even though she was telling me, she was kind of like doing the whole check-in thing, I was just like, I don't even know how I'm coming across. I didn't really care. I was like, I'm not even, you know, I don't know if I was kind of hurt by my friend not showing up and not like telling me that they weren't going to show up. I don't know how I felt about that, but I think I did kind of feel some kind of way about it. I don't know, because I know that person didn't really even want to go, but then it felt a little manipulative, almost potentially, just because they were asking me for like, they asked me like 2 or 3 times within the days before, like if I was going. So I'm like, well, yeah, I'm going. Like, I don't know why they keep asking me that, but they weren't even going. Um, I didn't know that they weren't gonna go. They were asking me if I was gonna go, as if I'm the one who's not gonna be likely to show up. It's like, I will show up. Like, will you show up? Is what I should have probably asked. But now I know that they don't really show up to stuff. Sometimes if they don't feel like it, they just don't do it, and if they're not interested, they don't do it. And so I guess I was upset by that, but I was totally tuned off to this other person who's like perfectly pleasant. She was perfectly nice and pleasant, and um, I don't think I'm gonna get another chance to meet her, to be honest. Um, I kind of messed that one up, but it wasn't a date, and I was like, I don't know, man. Like, it wasn't cool. Like, um, it could have been better. It could have been like a better situation. Um, so that was one. I guess that's one example. Like I was totally like ignoring this person, wasn't making small talk, wasn't even trying to get to know them. And we were there for like hours. Let's say it ended at like 11 p.m. or something. We were there from like, let's say 3 p.m. I think they picked me up around 1 something or 2 something. So I feel like we got there around 3 p.m. So we spent a good 7 hours, 8 hours together not talking, and then another like maybe 2 hours after the fact getting out of the traffic, picking up her friend at the airport, and then we went out to eat after that. So we spent at least like an hour or two after, probably more like 2 hours after the show. So we spent like a whole night, and I didn't really talk much until we were eating dinner, which was like late at night. So I don't think I was completely, you know, a jerk, but I was, I just, I don't know. I just wanted to see my other friend. That was all. That's all it really was. But, you know, I'm able, when I reflect on it, I'm able to look back and be like, I can see why that wasn't a very smooth situation. The edibles, I don't think really helped me. Like, they kind of made me all like, I got a nice body high and like totally tuned into like the heavy bass of the music and stuff, and like was totally feeling it physically and was not interested in like anybody else. Like I was like, I don't want to talk to anybody. Like, and I don't go to concerts to talk to people. Like, I'm there because I like the music. And so usually, having an edible and tuning out everybody else is fine for me because I'm only there for the music. I don't mind enjoying the music with other people or people talking a little bit, but I'm kind of not there to like get to know anybody. Um, I don't want to get to know anyone. I don't want any of that. Um, but I mean, I do like to catch up. I'm friendly. That was an example where I was not the best example of my friendliest self. And I was kind of like a little bit irritated, I guess. Um, I was kind of irritated about kind of how I didn't really fully know that the other person wasn't coming. I don't know how I felt. It was, I don't know. I was enjoying myself in the moment. I was kind of nervous though. I remember being like, I don't really know what to say, but like I was stoned. Like I that's not the best time for me to be talking to new people. Um, but it was someone I'd seen before that I would say I think this person is attractive and would have been kind of worth getting to know. But I didn't really want that. Plus it was kind of too close to home. Like I don't really want to be dating friends of friends. Like I kind of like my distance with things, but I like to meet new people. Um, it could have been smoother for sure. Um, but I think that's like an extreme example of being tuned into yourself. I'm not saying that people should have cannabis edibles if you're not into that kind of thing, or if you're underage or in a place in the world where it's not legal, don't do it. But for those of us who kind of know how to kind of manage that and have dabbled enough to kind of understand the ins and outs of everything and kind of have a good feel for everything by this point, if you've had those types of products, it's not all like when you're in an overly stimulating environment, that's probably not the best time to try to go on a date, unless the other person you're with is on that same wavelength with you, and then you can just kind of deal. And another thing was too is like those friends had both had they were handing out free C4 tall cans at this event, and my friends had both had at least one each, if not two each, and I didn't have any caffeine, so my energy was way low, and their energy was really sociable and high, but then also we were just like sitting there, so it was kind of just like a weird combo of things. Like when I look back on it, I'm like, it's new. It was an event with a new set of people that I don't usually go to these things with, and it was fun. Um, but yeah, um, but yeah, not being tuned into the other person can really impact anxiety. I've noticed, because the more you're like way tuned into yourself, I mean, you want to be aware of yourself, but you also want to be aware of the other person. Um, like if somebody is asking me multiple times, like, "Are you okay?" or "How are you doing?" It's like, well, I'm probably doing or acting or not acting a certain way for them to be asking me that. They're seeing something or interpreting something as maybe there's something wrong with me, or maybe I'm upset about something, and I was, like, when I think about that scenario, like, I was kind of upset about something. I can't remember now how upset I was, but I do remember after the fact getting really kind of, I remember venting to some friends about it for like a day or two, because I was really unhappy with how that had gone, because I actually really wanted to see this person. Um, and that didn't happen, but for like maybe like a little bit of time on the next day. And so, like a little bit, not even like 30 minutes. And then it was already late and I had to leave, because I would have to Uber early. I would always miss like one of the last acts because um, I would leave early because I'd have to catch an Uber, and it's like impossible to get an Uber when everyone else is leaving, um, or the rates go up or something. So I was like, well, I gotta go catch an Uber. And I was more on my own time. I was like, I'm gonna leave at this time. And she went and got in the bathroom line. And then I was like, well, I gotta go. So I left. And maybe I did it because I was upset. Maybe not. I don't remember. Probably. That's probably why I left without really like saying anything. Um, um, but, and just knowing how to communicate, you know, about things. Um, I don't think I ever like told that person. I wasn't ever like, oh, like I was upset during that weekend or whatever. Like I probably never mentioned it to them. I think I vented to some other people who didn't really know this person. Um, um, but I've also learned, don't look forward to things too much to a point where you can try to predict what it's going to be like before it actually happens. Uh, and pretty much from that point, that's where I kind of realized I was like, if I want to make plans with people, I have to expect that sometimes it's just not going to go as planned. And people have every right to adjust the plans according to what they prefer, you know, and I don't really want to do that, so I've kind of learned to like limit myself with certain people, when they're trying to plan with me. Say if they're like, oh, if you're in town, like you should like crash at my place, and it's like, well, I know that you're never home or don't remember when I'm coming to town, so I really don't want to plan, you know, around somebody else's schedule who can't remember to even show up for drinks or something simple, so there's usually that, like, kind of that learning. But if you haven't really learned someone's patterns, um, it's kind of hard for some people it's kind of hard to be comfortable with a new person, and then the anxiety can get in the way, and I feel like that can not really make or break a first date or second date or like those early dates, but in a way it can kind of make or break things, because some people aren't going to be too understanding of like why you might have been acting weird or saying weird things or not talking at all, or um, and this isn't directed at people who maybe have an anxiety disorder, or you know you need some kind of medication to adjust that, or you know I'm kind of just talking in general, because people in general get kind of nervous. If you've got a whole situation of a diagnosis going on, this isn't, I think this is too general for that, but kind of. But I can't really gauge where somebody's anxiety might be. But if you do feel like you have anxiety to a point that it like interferes with your relationships, it might be something along these lines. Like I have friends who are completely nice people that I enjoy spending time with. I like being around. I know that they might have quirks here and there, as do I, but I know that they might have quirks. And other people don't like those quirks. They're uncomfortable with those quirks. I don't really care, And so I kind of notice that, that when certain people, you know, are around and they kind of have these quirks, and sometimes I'll be a little bit like, oh, well, this person, I can kind of tell where things aren't going well, but I don't know. It's not the end of the world. Um, Everybody kind of makes their own decisions with things, and I think overall that's one thing to keep aware of, is just mostly that, the attunement to another person. You can't completely tune out from yourself, but I mean that wouldn't be a good idea, I don't think, because then you wouldn't really realize how you're acting. But you have to be able to kind of do that back and forth, not only just hyper attuned to yourself. That's too When it's too much, and it's like I'm only focused on me and how I feel and how I'm not comfortable, and just being too concerned with that, and not so concerned of like, okay, how's it coming out, to this other person? Am I breathing? Am I talking? Am I listening? Am I actually like sensing things around me and like tuned into this person? Or am I like so tuned into my own mind that like I can't even like listen to what they're saying? Trying to get good at shifting that attention between yourself and another person, and kind of like really tuning into what they say, their body language, how they're reacting to things, and also tuning back in with yourself. you know. Um, it can't be too one-sided. You can't tune fully into somebody else or fully tune into yourself. It needs to be balanced. Um, um, I mean, sometimes you can tune way into somebody else. Like if somebody's like, hey, can we go? I need to vent about something. Can we go out for a drink? And then like they just want to vent. It's like, sure, come over. Let them vent. Like that's not necessarily a time for you to be like, well, I have this other thing going on, so just because we're in the same space now, I'm just going to talk about me and my problem. And it's like, but they literally told you they wanted to meet because they needed to talk to you. They want to vent about some other random thing. So they're kind of expecting to have you there to listen. They're not really expecting to have you there to talk about your scenario, unless it's like relevant or unless they actually ask or whatever. But stuff like that, it can be easy to overlook certain things that people say, and sometimes people aren't direct. A lot of times people aren't direct. They're very subtle. If people start saying things like, I want to, I want to, you know, if people start saying certain things like that they want to talk to you, you know, but, you know, maybe they don't want to talk to you on the phone, you know, or maybe they'd rather talk to you on the phone because they don't like texting. People say that, they'll be like, I don't like texting. If you keep texting them, they're not going to want to talk, So certain people you might need to just make plans to meet them in person or find time to talk on Zoom or on the phone because they don't want to text. Certain people love texting. Certain people love talking on the phone. I like talking on the phone to a couple people I know. I don't like talking on the phone to like every single person. I like talking on the phone though. It just depends. And then certain people have a hard time meeting up because of whatever they've got going on. But people aren't usually going to be very straightforward with that. A lot of times they're just going to start avoiding you. You'll so trying to be attuned to people, but also knowing that they might be subtle about something, even if it's something that they really prefer or really get bothered by, they might just be subtle about it. And you kind of have to figure out quickly, is that thing something that really annoys them? Is it something that you really understand? And just kind of like having an awareness around those types of things, because sometimes it can be easy to be like not too aware of what this person needs or wants, and just kind of be like running around doing your own thing when they literally have verbalized and told you, even if it's just once in passing, you know, somebody telling you something, you got to remember things and remember what it is that people need from you. And I'm a clueless person. I'm completely clueless, but that's why I say I can reflect on things and be like, oh, I missed the mark on that one. But sometimes people are just subtle. They don't want to hurt your feelings. They know you're not going to take a. They might think you can take a hint. They might not know you can't take a hint, so they might just stop talking to you. And it might not be for that reason, but that might be the reason why they stop talking. They're like, this person doesn't catch on. I'm telling them that I'm annoyed by this or that or whatever. But you also might not want to be with a person who can't directly tell you what's going on, because if you never understand it and they're way too passive and like for your own style, and you need somebody just to sit you down and be like, look, whenever we meet up, you're like 45 minutes late, and my time is, precious, and, I don't really like waiting for you, like maybe they're mean about it, maybe they're nice about it, but, you gotta kind of understand a little bit of where they're coming from. Some people aren't just gonna tell you that, they might say they've got 2 hours, and then you wonder why they never want to stay longer than like barely like an hour. But it's like, well, if you're showing up 45 minutes late and you guys were going to meet for 2 hours, but you took 45 minutes of that 2 hours, maybe they're really strict with their schedule and they're just like, screw that. I don't want to wait an extra 45 minutes hanging with this person. I'm just going to leave when I thought I was going to leave, and things like that with the difficulties with communication, you know, some people might say they're direct and they're not. Some people might just be rude and abusive and mean, but some people just don't really, you know, they wait till they get too mad or something, you know, like sometimes it just doesn't work out that easy. It's not very simplified. Um, but if you notice something with someone where it's like that, you know, um, trying to find a way to like communicate about stuff without just like nitpicking at every little thing. Um, I mean, everyone's got their own ways of doing things, and it's good to kind of know what those methods are, or what those things are that a person does or doesn't like, or what they would prefer. But yeah, just know that sometimes people are going to be a little subtle. They might give subtle hints, and if they don't know that you're not able to pick up on that, then you know they're going to be giving you all these subtle hints, and you're just going to be missing them left and right, and then they're going to get annoyed, and they're not going to say anything, and then you're going to get annoyed because you can tell that they're annoyed, but you don't know why. So, and sometimes when you ask people what's wrong, they don't know what's wrong. You know, they can't verbalize that to you. They can't tell you what's wrong, or what they need from you, or they feel like, oh, it's too early for me to be like requesting stuff of this person. I don't want to be a burden or, you know, annoy them. You know, it can be hard, but we'll talk maybe some more if I can figure out other topics. I like this topic. I like the anxiety related stuff. I mean, I'm like having anxiety, but I like that the topic is something that's kind of easier to discuss. And if I record more about these dating episodes, I'll talk more about some other various topics. We'll see, because I don't really know yet. Alright, guys, that's it for now. Thanks for listening.